Let me repeat that. I don't think the mic was on. Good morning and welcome to the Governing Board Elections Committee meeting. The time is 9 o'clock. I would also like to establish a quorum with 5 of 7 members in attendance. And before we get started, agenda item 1.03, I would like to read out the meeting procedure. The governing board and its committees conduct all of their meetings in compliance with Arizona Plan Community Association open meeting laws per Arizona State Regulation 33-1804 and in concert with the Rec Center bylaws, policies, and standing rules. Parliamentary procedures as outlined in the most recent edition of Robert's Rules of Order will also be followed in all meetings as appropriate and consistent with Bylaw 3.07, procedures for owner-member meetings, and standing rules number 2 and 3. Next on the agenda is the approval of our minutes of March 21st, 2025. These minutes were posted online and emailed to the, posted online for the committee members. Do we have a consensus to accept these minutes?
Second.
The minutes are accepted and will be filed as distributed. Now to agenda item 3, new business. First of all, I would like to congratulate our new board members. Ann Becknell, Nick Turner, John Chatton were elected to the full 3-year terms. And based on vote totals after the 3-year terms were filled, Sandra Forsey filled the open 1-year term. However, I'd also like to say that the other 6 candidates certainly deserve kudos and thanks for being willing to step forward to support our community. We would not have such a wonderful community without people being willing to volunteer. I also want to thank all of the committee members who are also willing volunteers. The Torch Committee also assisted in our election day, our in-person election. Bob Wilson, Judy Penman, and Donna Lester. Katie O'Grady and her crew certainly deserve kudos and thanks for doing such a great job with PR, the candidate bios, videos, and for making everything run smoothly. And also special thanks to Katie for answering so many questions, and helping to make things happen in the blink of an eye. Thank you, Katie. And of course, great thanks to Karen Roken, our executive committee assistant. No, I didn't say that right. Governing board executive assistant. We thank Karen for her tireless energy and all of her help in supporting the committee function and also her keen eye for detail. So thank you all. It's really appreciated. Agenda item 3.02, new process review. We had a couple of new processes this year. One was on how we posted on the golf course bulletin boards that the campaign material was sent to the election committee for approval. And then it was forwarded to Katie, who forwarded it to the golf course for posting on the bulletin board. Now, this did help to take golf course personnel out of the middle of it. And because a lot of people who work at the golf course would not be aware of how it should happen. So that solved that problem. However, personally, I would recommend that campaign material not be placed anywhere on Sun City West property, including the bulletin boards. But that's certainly for the next committee, and but it will be one of my recommendations. We also had a new process for homebound voting, which I thought worked out beautifully, even though we didn't have a lot of requests. A person wishing to take advantage of homebound voting would call into member services, and they would take down their information, and then they would forward this information to the election chairs, who then contacted the folks and determined the best means for voting or how to handle the homebound voting. This year, we also had a campaign tent, Candidates Corner, at the Munchie Monday event, which is put on by the Rec Center. Personally, I really like this because I like the fact, I think the candidates should have every opportunity possible, or our members, as well as the candidates, the members should be able to easily meet the candidates. And I think having a section where they could all be together, then the members could very easily go in and talk to any or all. And I believe that this did go along with our bylaws in so much as we say that folks cannot campaign during an event, but like with Munchie Monday, it is not, a particular event such as a concert. There's people walk around as they will, and it was up to the members to walk into that tent to talk to the candidates. Therefore, it was up to the members to make the decision. So I would like to see that happen more often, because I think it's a great opportunity for the candidates and the members. So that'll certainly be one of my recommendations. Agenda item 3.03, voting update. Katie, I think you're the lady with the numbers, so could you kind of give us an overview of that, please?
Sure. The vendor did provide us with certified results, and it shows that we had 6,693 members who cast a ballot. Again, some of those would have been weighted if they own more than one property. And we had 24,899 eligible voters. So they're members in good standing, owner members in good standing. 9 of those votes were by telephone. And we only had 319 in-person votes. The rest were cast early online. So people are taking advantage of the online voting, which is good. I think that's all the numbers I've got to report.
Yes, so that was, around 27%?
Yeah, 26.9%
Yeah.
turnout, yeah, which is actually very good for a regular governing board election. Last year was very high, but of course we had the parking referendum, so 27% is high for a normal governing board election.
Yes, and we also took advantage of radio advertising. Thank you, Ron. To promote online voting, and I hope that Katie and her team certainly had a lot of PR around online voting.
If I may add to that, I'd like to see a little more of that, actually. We've got, a number of weeks where we have openings on the rec center show, and we could take a little bit more advantage of that, get a little bit more information out there, even if it just means stopping by as like a third person to be interviewed on the show, just like a quick update, just as a prodding reminder, I think might be beneficial as well. So,
yes, I agree. That should be a recommendation, that we do take more advantage of the Sun City West radio station. Good point. I think that's probably all on the voting update, but agenda item 3.04, election day update, just to talk about how it went in general. We did have a few folks lined up early on, waiting to get in, which was exciting. However, that initial rush only lasted about 20 minutes, but it kicked us into gear rather quickly. There were a couple of more busy periods throughout the day. I think probably maybe when clubs got out, or maybe people finished bowling or such as that. But we really did have a steady trickle all day. I think there were only 2 occasions, 2 short periods when there was not a voter in the room. Other than that, it was pretty good. We had also, this year, it was a little bit longer getting the results. I know we had told the candidates that we would probably have the results ready by 3:30, but I think it was pushing, 3:45. But I think in looking at the results of the vote, there were a couple of votes that were close, and so I would think that the vendor was probably reviewing and re-reviewing to ensure. Katie?
Yeah, he always checks the numbers, make sure they make sense, especially because we have weighted voting. And so we're a little different from most of the community. So he just does his due diligence, and then he prepares the certified PDF results for us. So it's just checking. It just took a little longer this year.
Yes, and I think one recommendation, what we do now is we say to the candidates, okay, it should be in by 3:30, and they wait outside until we have the results. And then this year with 10 candidates, we all try to crowd into the Data Resource Center. It may be an idea in the future to set a specific time, such as 4 o'clock. And then if we have, especially if we have a large pool of candidates, to maybe have the announcement here in the lecture hall. That's something else the new committee may consider. Agenda item, does anyone have anything they'd like to say about Election Day? Agenda item 3.05, election process document reviews. I have redlined the petition and candidate packets, the election guide, and the training packet based on any changes during the course of the election this year, such as the fact that we had campaign material on the bulletin board or the process for homebound voting. So I'll get those red lines, and I will be sending that to the committee just for a quick look, and then I'll submit the red line copies to Karen so that they will also be available to the new committee. And that's a change. I think in the past, everything was on written documents, hard copies. But this year, and I hope that in the future, going forward, I'll submit everything electronically. And I think with redlining the documents that will work, and it'll certainly be much easier for the incoming committee to review. Anybody have anything to say on process documents? Agenda item 3.06, request for governing board to review bylaws. I will present a final report to the governing board in July, and at that time, I plan to request that the board review some bylaws and policies. Under Article 3, owner-member election meetings, there are some bylaws, L9 through 12. I think they could have it would be worth a review just for, if nothing else, for consistency of terminology, and decide, exactly, because when it gets to online voting, we see it referred to as absentee ballots, early ballots, online, email. So I think that it would be very helpful to be consistent on that. And also, L9 through 3.9 through 3.12 are just short little documents. I really believe it would uncomplicate things if they were merged together. And then, of course, there are other associated documents that would need to be updated, but I will plan on recommending that in my final report. Bylaw 4.03, election of candidates. I believe that there can be better definition of elect and appoint. And that also references absentee ballot, which could be updated. So I will certainly make recommendations around bylaw 4.03 to give the governing board. Policy L13, which is a new policy this year, authorized use of association common areas for association-specific political activity. That's a nice short title. I hope everybody got that. And that reviews where candidates can campaign, where they can post material. But like I say, I think there were a couple of changes this year. For example, the candidate tent that we used during Munchie Monday. And I think there's some things that can just be stated more clearly in that. And plus, we need that to coincide with the training, and we need the training to coincide with that, and that back and forth so that everything coincides.
Wouldn't that clarification help you, or whoever the next chairman is too, in terms of keeping the candidates from stepping out a little bit, and it will make it a little more clear for them? I know there were some questions regarding where they could be, that sort of thing. So clarification would make a lot of sense, I would think.
Oh, yes. And I mean, one thing that I'm sure we as a committee understand, but that all folks need to understand is just like with L13 and with training, we cannot possibly anticipate every single scenario. And so sometimes decisions will have to be made based on something that comes up. And, and I think that really the candidates did try to operate according to L13 and what was discussed in training. So that was a good thing. Moving on to agenda item 3.07, other topics. I'll start off with a couple of things, and then it will be the committee's turn to make any suggestions. We had talked about online voting, and like I say, folks, they did sign up. It was we told them if they were unsure to send the information in the form of email. But then some people didn't make the deadlines, and some people didn't understand. There was a lot of work for the staff, I think, because when people did send in information, the staff had to look up to make sure, and in many cases they were already registered. Katie, can you talk about an idea?
Sure. One of the things, the vast majority of emails we got to the Vote at Sun City West email account were people just checking. And so they were already registered, and it was fine. And we'd prefer that. We definitely want them to make sure that they're registered. But easy way to maybe preempt some of those is for us to do a mass emailing to every owner member in good standing several weeks before the election, and just say, if you're getting this email, we do have your email account. If you need any changes, here's how you go about it. So that'll help. There is a risk, like with any of these, that the mass emails that go out will end up in spam or junk, and they won't see it, and I didn't get mine, which is what happens with the ballots as well. So there's pros and cons either way. It's easy enough for us to do it. Be happy to send that out early, and then people can rest assured we have their email address on file. And then also we could take changes right up until the polls close if that was something the committee wanted to do. The only issue with that is if they send us an email saying, hey, I need to change my email address, and it's 2:59. Do we get it in time, have the polls closed, and now they say, well, I got my email in time. Maybe we replied to them and they didn't reply back in time. So pros and cons either way. We're happy to adjust it as you see fit.
Yeah, no, I think that's certainly a good recommendation, because we do want people to vote, and we want to make it easy on them. But we don't want to kill the staff either. So that'll certainly be a recommendation. We also, before our open forum, we have our members, we give them an opportunity to submit questions via SurveyMonkey. And it's great in that we can get the questions early and then have an opportunity to review them to make, that we don't repeat the same question 5 or 6 times, and we can pull them in together. However, Merle, our secretary, has been responsible for SurveyMonkey, and we did start it earlier this year, but we still didn't close it out till, I believe, the 2 days before the forum. And Merle, I think you had mentioned that it might be better to have an earlier closing on that.
I would like to see it start maybe a week earlier and close before the first question session that the committee has is scheduled. And then that way, it just gets confusing because you work on it and then you throw some new but very good ideas into the mix. So I think it would just make it easier to clarify.
Yes, and two, we have our committee meeting scheduled for once a month. It may be that we need to alter the schedule for our planning when we have a closed meeting to plan the questions. So we may need to alter that to coincide with the election date, with the date of the forum, because these dates change every year. So that's something we should also consider.
Do we have any way of knowing how many of the questions we use that the audience wrote up as compared to what we did in advance, between what we talked about at the meetings and what came through SurveyMonkey?
I'm not sure how many we had through SurveyMonkey, and I'm not sure how many were submitted. How many were submitted during the meeting. We had a good few.
There were many submitted via SurveyMonkey. Some of them were repetitive, and so we take those out. I didn't count how many questions came in from the audience that day. Many were repetitive, and many were unfortunately directed to individual candidates, which we don't entertain. So there were some questions that were disqualified because of that. And again, the audience, many of them were repetitive. So percentage-wise, I can't tell you, Ron.
Yeah. And one other thing. I think, for the questions for the audience, or a lot of the questions, the second half of the forum, we had allowed the candidates 2 minutes to respond. I thought the candidates were playing it very safe. I would have taken the whole 2 minutes. And I don't know if the new committee might even consider asking candidates specific questions. In other words, we would just draw a name out of the hat on who would respond to a question. But it may be, I don't think there's anything that says a person can't be asked a specific question, because I know a lot of folks mention that, they'd read something in a person's biography and they'd want to know more about it. And I think I would suggest that, especially with such a large pool, there's a lot that folks have to consider. So that certainly might be a recommendation too, that the questions could be asked of individuals and modeled around what they have, what their platform may be. Something for consideration. Anybody have anything else on that topic?
For suggestions for next year, is that or on that specific topic?
Oh, just that specific topic. Yeah, because I've got a couple, a couple of more things. I think that the election committee, there were a couple of changes this year in that the committee had to approve the campaign material and such as that. I think that the election committee should be provided with a Sun City West email address, and perhaps even at least the chair be provided a phone such that they don't have to advertise their personal emails and their phone numbers, because we did do that this year. I did establish a Sun City West Elections email address, but it was not through, it was one that I just entitled that. And that did help, because I was able to keep the emails separate, and then I knew I tried to respond rapidly if something came into that particular address, if one of the candidates had a question. And even for the public too, they have questions that they could call the chair. So I think that a phone and an email address would be a consideration for the committee. I also asked the candidates if they had any suggestions on what they thought might be an improvement. I did have one candidate said that perhaps we could take advantage of the photography club to do the photographs, and they do have great talent in the photography club. But then, of course, there's also other areas that we'd have to be careful of. Now, I'm not saying this is true, but let's say that they have 3 different people taking pictures, and they might not all have the same ability. So you'd have to be there'd have to be guidelines on how that can be done. And I think that that's a good thing about the pictures being taken by the rec center, because they were consistent. They were consistent. But I can also see where the candidates may want to have more control. I'm not going to make a recommendation on that either way. I'll just let it be known. And that's all I have on other topics. And now I'm going to ask the committee for their input. And I'm going to start with Steve, because, Steve, you had mentioned about hearing aids and Bluetooth. You were saying that during the open forum, I believe you had a difficult time with hearing. Can you talk to that about that a bit?
Yeah, I find personally for anyone with hearing aids, or in my case, cochlear implants, that the speaker system, most of any venue, is very difficult to hear, and it's going through where people use microphones is also difficult. There are some options, and we use one at the church I go to that is connected through the board as far as the audio board, and it streams directly to your Bluetooth or cochlear implant, and is tremendous in terms of being able to hear. So I know personally I'm checking into that, because I think that it wouldn't be that difficult to plug into an audio board, and you would need to have Wi-Fi, because most systems work with Wi-Fi on that system. And then people would have to log in and download the app, but then they would hear directly. And so that would help tremendously, like in a room like this, and certainly when you have the other people that are speaking candidate forum and so forth. So I'm going to check into that and hopefully have a recommendation for a number of different venues that we have here in Sun City West.
Yes, and now with I think we have an individual IT department, certainly maybe pass that thought on, because I mean, so many folks with hearing aids, and you know, in our community there are good many folks with hearing aids, but they do operate with Bluetooth. So it might not be that difficult, and I think it's a great suggestion. So that'll certainly go into the recommendations to be.
I might add, I noticed when we were at Palm Ridge, there appears to be some capacity over there. I didn't understand it. I did ask Martin, and Martin said he wasn't familiar with the system because that's not typically where he works.
Yeah, we have in the past had something, and I'm not super familiar with it either, but even if we had something 5 years ago, the technology has changed so much with, Bluetooth, your phones go right into your hearing aid. So definitely whatever research you do, pass on to me or pass on to the IT manager, or I'll get it to him. We'd love to look into that.
Yeah, there is a difference between the Bluetooth technology and just headsets that people wear. It's a different technology, and the Bluetooth technology that streams is much clearer because it goes directly to your hearing aid, or in my case, cochlear implant.
Very good. Thank you for that, Steve. I'll start with Ron. Ron, do you have any?
Well, I just want to reiterate that I thought things went very well. I thought this committee worked very well together with the candidates, and there was a good level of cooperation, and certainly not the issues that I actually might have expected in a situation like that. Everybody had their role, everybody did their role, and as the new kid on the block, I just want to say thank you to all the committee members and Katie for giving me the support that I needed in the things that I ended up being responsible for. I thought it was a good event, and certainly these recommendations that we're making today, I think, are going to go a long way too to make things a little bit smoother. Steve, your point about Bluetooth and hearing aids, it's I think a vital thing to look into, because so many of us are heading in that direction. We want to give people, we want to take away reasons to not attend things or to not be a part of things. The easier we can make it for our residents, I think the better it is for the election in general. So I think good job to the committee and good job to the candidates.
Thank you, Ron. Steve, did you have any other suggestions?
Just being first time here, seeing how everything runs, and especially in the last couple of years, I thought with this year, Luann, with your organization, and Leslie and the whole team kept the candidates in order, and everything ran smoothly. And I think that just the way that you especially handled things made everything go well. So I appreciate that. And with 10 candidates, we, I think, did well, and didn't have any people or issues that were brought up from the past. So thank you.
Thank you, Steve. Sauna, as in spa, sauna, not the southern pronunciation, Santa, sauna.
Sauna. Take that sauna, S-A-U-N-A, and turn it over. You've got me. I just want to say thank you to this entire committee this year. I've been on it for several years, but this was so well orchestrated, worked together. I really appreciated the efforts and how well we all really did work well together. And Luann, your leadership was absolutely incredible. I was so impressed with what you did for us and how you led us. And looking at that, let's just take our meet and greet. We had to keep bringing in chairs. People just kept arriving and kept arriving and kept arriving. I think a lot of that has to do with how we did get the publicity out there for our events. And Ron, thank you very, very much for what you did with the radio station.
And the radio station fully is behind, what the community does here. So, like I said earlier, let's try to get a little bit more exposure. I think we can fill these rooms up a little bit more too if we just kind of beat the drum a little bit more. And I'll certainly do my part over there at KSCW.
Thank you.
I think that's excellent. And I really do tend to agree with Luann about the safe responses that a lot of our candidates were making, which in a lot of ways did not give out the information that I think a lot of people were looking for. So, it's just an area, not certain quite how we would redevelop that, but it is something that we definitely need to look at. But we had 10 candidates. I find what we did was a tremendous, tremendous effort and all in the right directions, and a lot of new things were accomplished. So.
Yep.
One thought I would put forward for both the forum and the meet and greet next year would it be advisable to request no audience applause prior to the candidate speaking? And it kind of is time consuming in one way, which maybe if there's not 10 candidates, it's not as critical. The other thing that I did notice when we were at Palm Ridge, there were some people that some of the candidates had a considerable amount of distance to walk, and so they received a considerable amount of applause from their supporters, and some people were very close. And so, just to keep that playing field level, and I know, I want to thank you, Luann, for all of the organizational skills, how you tried to keep every thing level on the playing field. And I don't think people realize the amount of time and effort that goes in your role in terms of organizing this starting from the fall till now. And of course, as a committee, we all know how organized you are. And we do appreciate that because it helps keep all of us on the same page. So thank you so much.
Thank you. Thank you very much. So with no other recommendations, I'll move on to agenda item 4.0, comments. I think we've already had the committee comments. I don't know if anybody else has anything to say. Jump in now if you do. And item 4.02, in-person or YouTube comments. Do we have any comments from our audience? Yeah, that's you. And Merle, do we have any comments from online?
There are no comments on YouTube.
Okay, well, goodness. That means it's moving on to item 5.0, adjournment. I thought this meeting would go on a lot longer, but poor Merle, she's going to have to write it all up, but oh well, that's what you get paid for. No, folks, she does not get paid. She does not get paid. She's one of those wonderful volunteers, and she's very good about volunteering for secretary. Everybody else keeps their head down, certainly. So now I'd like to adjourn this meeting at 9:38 and close it with kudos for all that put forth such an effort in this election. Thank you.